Não. Você quer fazer? Não, só de um. Já acessou aqui. Da hora, né? Eu vou dar uma olhada. Acho que está sentado. Não, fala com ela, fala aí, tadinho. Não, vai, fala com ela.
Which one? To keep, okay?
But I need my paper.
Um, dois, três.
Aí, bro.
Boa tarde.
大家下午好，
É com grande alegria que a Universidade Estadual de Campinas
欢迎大家来到圣保罗坎皮纳斯州立大学，
recebe a todos para a abertura do Seminário Cass-Unicamp
参与到中国研究中心
com o tema Intercâmbio entre Civilizações, China e Brasil discutem o futuro da modernização.
举办的文明对话、中巴共话、现代化未来的主题仪式，
Sejam todos bem-vindos.
欢迎大家。
Anunciamos a mesa diretiva dessa cerimônia.
现在我将为大家介绍主席台人员。
Professora doutora Ana Fratini, magnífica reitora em exercício da Unicamp.
坎皮纳斯州立大学代理校长安娜·弗拉提尼女士，
Professor doutor Zhao Hui, vice-presidente da CAS, Chinese Academy of Social Science.
中国社会科学院副院长赵瑞，
Professor doutor Tom Dwyer, diretor brasileiro da Cass-Unicamp.
汤姆·德海尔先生是坎皮纳斯中国研究中心的八方主任。
Agradecemos a presença dos gestores de órgãos, diretores de faculdades e institutos e demais convidados. Muito obrigado pela presença.
感谢各位尊敬的来宾与研究人员，欢迎。
Convidamos a fazer uso da palavra Professor Dr. Tom Dwyer, diretor brasileiro do Cass-Unicamp.
首先将邀请中国研究中心八方主任汤姆·海亚教授发言。
Boa tarde.
下午好，
Boa tarde. João, vice-presidente da Chinesa de Ciências Sociais, professora Maria Fratini Filete, reitora em exercício da Unicamp, professores, pesquisadores, alunos, dos interessados, leitores, estudantes,
尊敬的中国社会科学院副院长赵瑞先生，尊敬的坎皮纳斯州立大学代理校长安娜女士，在座的各位教授、研究人员，尊敬的学生和代表团，其他相关人士，欢迎大家。
Acabamos de ter uma reunião onde os outros meus colegas vão falar sobre coisas muito importantes, onde aprendemos que esse tema de intercâmbio civilizacional China-Brasil, discutindo o futuro da modernização, vai servir de pauta de discussão ao longo dos próximos anos e, quem sabe, ao longo dos próximos séculos.
我们刚刚举办的会议，我们有其他的两位同事 讨论了中巴文明之间的交流，探讨双方的现代化未来。我也相信这个主题将成为未来我们几年双方的讨论议程。
Fala de séculos no Brasil é muito estranho, porque tem no máximo como nação concebida, latina, etc., 5 séculos. Enquanto a China tem 30, 40, 50 séculos, dependendo da fonte, como civilização.
而讨论巴西与中国呢，是两个具有非常不同的源头的一个双方的国家。巴西和中国它的发展的模式和流程和历史都是不一样的。
E o tema modernização que os chineses estão usando é um tema muito mais amplo que o tema que a gente tem usado, que é desenvolvimento.
中国人所说的现代化主题是一个非常新的议题，而这个议题呢，对于巴西人来说，人们经常会用发展来形容这个议题。
E vamos começar a discutir isso aqui na Unicamp, com a Cass, hoje à tarde, daqui a alguns minutos.
而中国呢提出来的这个现代化的发展议题，也即将在我们坎皮纳斯州立大学，在中国的拉丁美洲研究所的支持之下，对我们双方对其进行更多的讨论。
Modernização, na realidade, vista pelos chineses, é um tema mais amplo, mais complexo, e dá para a gente entender que nossas modernizações, obviamente, vão ser muito diferentes, porém, vão se encontrar em vários momentos.
当然，这个课题呢也是一个非常复杂的课题，双方的国情也非常不同，但我仍希望双方可以积极的讨论。
E agora, minhas últimas palavras, mas o tema da civilização é um tema onde os chineses têm uma contribuição impressionante, inclusive construindo uma civilização contínua em existência. E nós aqui no Brasil somos parte da mais nova tentativa de construir uma civilização.
而中国人提到的这个现代化的议题呢，中方也做出了令人印象深刻的贡献。而在巴西，我们也希望可以将这个议题带入我们的日常讨论中。
Então, eu vou só citar umas palavras de Darcy Ribeiro, que escreveu um livro, O Povo Brasileiro, onde ele teoriza as bases da civilização latino-americana, baseado nos estudos dele nessa região e, sobretudo, no Brasil.
所以接下来我希望引用一个书里的几句话。这本书呢，主要是介绍巴西人以及巴西这个文明在拉丁美洲文明的基础下的发展。
Se eu falo em inglês, você consegue traduzir?
如果他说英文，那我可以翻译信的。
Ok, está escrito em inglês, eu
因
não
为它是
quero.
用英文写的。
Eu traduzi do português para o inglês, eu tinha escrito
他从
português.
普语翻译成了英文，现在
Ok,
翻译的流程有点多。
Obrigado.
OK。
we are building ourselves in the struggle to flower tomorrow as a new civilization.
我们正在努力建设一个更好的、积极的现代化民主未来。
Mixed race and tropical, proud of itself.
在热带地区建立一个多民族的融合。
More cheerful because it has suffered more.
我们将继续努力，因为它以前的历史非常沉重。
Bitter because it incorporates in itself more humanities.
但我也相信，这个多民族的融合的议题也会为这个话题带来更多的发展，因为它本身具有包容的属性。
More generous because open to all of the races and cultures living together.
并且它将是一个非常开放的，对所有人都能参与进来的一个课题。
And because seated in the most beautiful and illuminated province on earth.
并且也是将在地球上最美的城市之一进行讨论。谢谢。
Agora?
现在，
Convidamos a fazer uso da palavra Dr. Liu Qi, vice-presidente da Casa.
现在邀请邵院长上台进行演讲。
尊敬的弗莱迪代理校长，尊敬的汤姆教授，尊敬的各位师生、各位朋友。
Excelentíssima reitora, excelentíssimo diretor do Instituto do Centro de Pesquisa sobre a China, prezados pesquisadores, prezados alunos, todos convidados.
非常高兴出席中国社会科学院和坎皮纳斯州立大学中国研究中心举办的这次学术研讨会，与各位新老朋友在这个充满活力和创造力的大学校园相聚。
E é com grande alegria participar desse seminário organizado pela Cass-Unicamp Centro de Estudos sobre a China e reencontrar amigos antigos e novos nesse campus dinâmico e criativo.
我谨代表中国社会科学院向研讨会的召开表示热烈祝贺，也特别感谢长期以来关心和支持中巴学术交流的朋友们。
Em nome da CASE, parabenizo calorosamente para a realização bem-sucedida do seminário e agradeço sinceramente a todos que têm apoiado os intercâmbios acadêmicos entre China e Brasil.
本次研讨会以文明对话、中巴共化现代化未来为主题，具有重要的现实意义和时代价值。在当前全球格局深度调整、发展路径多样并存的形势下，来自不同文明背景的学者能够平等对话、交流思想，共同思考人类社会的未来走向，体现了学术的责任、思想的力量和文明的希望。
Tema deste seminário, Intercâmbio entre Civilizações, China e Brasil discutem o futuro da modernização e desenvolvimento é de grande relevância atual de valor histórico. Um cenário mundial em transformação, com múltiplos caminhos de desenvolvimento, o diálogo igualitário entre acadêmicos de diferentes civilizações reflete a responsabilidade intelectual, o poder do pensamento e a esperança das civilizações.
回顾过去我们的合作历程，从2019年，中国社会科学院与坎皮纳斯州立大学联合成立中国研究中心以来，双方始终本着互学互鉴、共建共享的精神，扎实推进合作机制建设，不断拓展合作内容。中心已逐步成长为中国社会科学在拉美地区的重要学术平台，也成为中巴两国高校与研究机构开展文明对话和学术交流的重要桥梁。
Desde a criação conjunta do Centro de Estudos sobre a China em 2019 pela Cass-Unicamp, temos seguido o espírito de aprendizado mútuo e construção compartilhada, consolidando mecanismos de cooperação e expandimos os conteúdos de parceria. O centro tornou-se gradualmente uma plataforma acadêmica fundamental da China na América Latina, bem como uma ponte essencial para o diálogo civilizacional e os intercâmbios acadêmicos entre instituições de ensino e pesquisa da China e do Brasil.
近年来，我们围绕当代中国社会研究课程、当代中国研究论坛、学术出版与人员互访，持续推动制度化、常态化合作。2024年1月，双方成功续签新一轮5年合作协议，标志着中国研究中心迈入深化合作的新阶段。我们十分欣喜地看到，越来越多的中巴青年学者、学生通过这一平台了解彼此社会，为深化中巴 人文交流注入了活力和创造力。
Nos últimos anos, promovemos cooperações regulares e institucionais em torno de cursos sobre a sociedade chinesa contemporânea, fóruns acadêmicos, publicações e intercâmbio de pesquisadores. Em outubro do ano passado, renovamos com sucesso o acordo de cooperação por mais 5 anos, marcando uma nova fase de aprofundamento da cooperação. É com grande satisfação que vemos cada vez mais jovens acadêmicos e estudantes da China e do Brasil usando essa plataforma para conhecer melhor as sociedades de ambos os países.
中国和巴西分处东西半球，分别承载着中华文明与拉美文明的深厚传统。尽管语言、文化、制度不同，但两国都坚定追求独立自主的发展道路，都重视社会公平与可持续发展，也都致力于通过全球合作解决人类面临的重大问题。文明对话不仅是理念交流，更是行动路径的互鉴。通过学术视角理解彼此的发展经验，是深化合作、增进信任、推动全球治理变革的基础。
China e Brasil são localizados em hemisférios opostos, representando tradições profundas da civilização chinesa e da civilização latino-americana. Apesar das diferenças em língua, cultura e sistemas, ambos os países buscam no caminho de desenvolvimento independente, valorizam a igualdade social e a sustentabilidade e se dedicam à colaboração global para enfrentar os grandes desafios da humanidade. O diálogo entre civilizações não se limita à troca de ideias, mas também permite aprendizado mútuo sobre caminhos práticos.
中国社会科学院愿继续与坎皮纳斯州立大学一道，加强中巴关于现代化问题的研究，围绕数字社会、环境治理、社会公平、青年发展等共同感兴趣的议题，深入开展合作研究，推动更多面向未来的制度创新与理论对话，共同探索人类现代化发展的前景。
A CAS está disposta a continuar colaborando com a Unicamp na pesquisa sobre modernização, promovendo estudos conjuntos em temas como sociedade, digital, governança ambiental, equidade social e desenvolvimento juvenil, impulsionando inovações institucionais e diálogos teóricos voltados para o futuro, explorando juntos as perspectivas da modernização humanidade.
同时，我们也希望在刚刚签署的中国社会科学院大学与坎皮纳斯州立大学学生交换协议的框架下，在青年培养、课程建设、成果共享等方面取得新突破，不断拓宽中巴文明对话的广度与深度。
Esperamos também alcançar novos avanços no âmbito do recente acordo de intercâmbio de estudantes nas áreas de formação de jovens, desenvolvimento curricular e compartilhamento de resultados, ampliando continuamente o alcance e a profundidade do diálogo civilizacional entre China e Brasil.
最后，预祝本次学术研讨会取得圆满成功，谢谢大家。
Desejo grande sucesso a esse seminário. Muito obrigado.
Convidamos a fazer uso da palavra a professora doutora Ana Fratini, magnífica reitora em exercício da Unicamp.
现在将邀请坎皮纳斯州立大学代理校长主持上台演讲。
Boa tarde a todas as pessoas presentes.
大家下午好。
Em nome do magnífico reitor da Unicamp, professor César Montanher, eu gostaria de iniciar minha fala saudando.
我谨代表坎皮纳斯州立大学校长先生向大家致以最崇高的致意。
Professor Jiao Rui, vice-presidente da Academia Chinesa de Ciências Sociais. Professor Tom Goyer, diretor brasileiro do Centro de Estudos da China na Unicamp.
尊敬的赵瑞先生，中国科学院副院长，还有尊敬的汤姆德赫尔教授，中国研究中心八方主任。
Saudar a todos os ilustres membros da delegação chinesa e toda a comunidade acadêmica da Unicamp.
欢迎来自中方代表团的各位研究者、学者以及在座的各位来宾。
É uma honra dar as boas-vindas a todos e todas nesse seminário China-Brasil sobre modernização e desenvolvimento.
非常高兴大家可以来参加今天我们的文明对话中巴共化现代化未来主题。
É com grande prazer que afirmo que a parceria de sucesso entre a Unicamp e a Academia Chinesa teve início em 2019, quando a Academia Chinesa de Ciências Sociais escolheu a Unicamp para estabelecer seu primeiro centro de estudos da China na América Latina.
我也很高兴，今天这个研讨会的举行是坎皮纳斯州立大学与中国社会科学院的成功合作。我们的双方的合作始于2019年，当时中国社会科学院选择坎大设立在拉丁美洲的第一个中国研究中心。
Essa cooperação já está estendida até 2029, disseminando cultura e história por meio do estudo dos múltiplos ramos da civilização chinesa.
我也很高兴，我们的双方的合作关系已经延续至2029年。双方也希望通过研究中国文明的多个领域，传播中国文化与历史。
E é com prazer que hoje nós aprofundamos nossa parceria acadêmica através da assinatura de um acordo com a Universidade da Academia Chinesa de Ciências Sociais.
今天我也很高兴，我们通过与中国社会科学院大学签署协议，进一步深化这一学术合作。
Nesse acordo, a mobilidade dos estudantes é o principal objetivo.
在这一个学术合作之中，我们学生的互换是我们合作的首要目标。
O intercâmbio de alunos da pós-graduação certamente fortalecerá as conexões de pesquisa já iniciadas pelo Centro da Academia Chinesa na Unicamp.
而我也相信，我们研究生之间的交流与交换，无疑将加强由坎大中国中心发起的研究合作。
Esperamos que essas colaborações também possam ser expandidas para outras áreas das ciências sociais e humanas, dando maior alcance a essa parceria já sólida.
我们也希望这种合作关系能够拓展至人文与科学、社会科学等其他领域，进一步加强这一坚实的合作关系。
A Unicamp enxerga o grande valor da parceria com a Academia Chinesa de Ciências Sociais e a sua respectiva universidade.
坎皮纳斯州立大学高度重视与中国社会科学院以及中国社会科学院大学的合作。
Agradeço a atenção e desejo a todos excelente e produtivo evento.
最后，感谢大家，希望我们的活动圆满成功。
Agradecemos às autoridades pela participação e encerramos esta mesa diretiva.
感谢各位教授、专家的发言。现在我们结束这一环节的流程。
Convidamos a todos em seguida para o tea break e após o seminário terá o seu início. Desejamos a todos uma ótima tarde.
现在邀请大家参与我们外面的茶歇，茶歇之后，我们的会议正式开始。谢谢。
那个还有一个，那你那个最后嘛，看到我们是来北京，上次在对，我们一块吃饭。是的，我在那个。
这是因为
Muito obrigada.
Say hi. Hi. Hello. Olá. Olá. Olá.
Sorry. Okay. Os meninos queriam ajuda com vocês para botar. Vocês não ajudam eles?
Vai lá.
Depois vão comer.
Acabou, né? Agora é só. Som. Deixa eu pegar o... Agora, você é auditório, não tem
mas não consiste essa parte.
Onde ficar? Aqui pertinho. Não, só dá uma frente. Do lado direito e direito.
Mas, ó, esses é bom para falar. Som, peça. Som, mas tá vendo? Som. Pessoal.
Né? Vamos comprar um.
Olha,
A moça do palco apareceu? A moça do palco apareceu?
Não, mas a Paula conseguiu pegar mais a minha. Tinha ali atrás. Mas eu acho que a moça do cofre foi embora, não? Ela tem que montar o resto. É, ela falou que ia arrumar. Ela falou que tinha que ir lá atrás arrumar as coisas. Não sei, então. Deixa eu jogar esse. Olha aí, já pegou.
Crocs é essa parte.
É.
Meu filho.
Ele passou de não, aquela aqui trilha.
Ah, eu sei, aquela fita mesmo, aquela
Porque
cinza.
tinha quebrado, ele passou e não dá.
Pelo amor de Deus. É que é improvisação.
Nunca faça isso, filho. Nunca faça isso.
Ele vai dirigir ainda. Tá bom para uma coisa, né?
定要会不会有。没事，我来给你操作。不是，我是说没有听众对。
Eu acho que é central.
Não, não, é isso. É tudo aqui, é isso. De computação, é coisa mais sofisticada. Esse estudo é muito bom, vários campos. Você trabalha aqui? Você consegue?
Ah, só.
Tudo certo? Ah, desculpa. A Macara vai estar fazendo aqui.
Gente, eu pedi para desligar o ar, tá bom? Porque está tudo congelado. Vai ficar.
Tá naquele.
Não, mas não pode aumentar a temperatura? Eu acho que pode.
Dá para diminuir um pouquinho a capacidade.
Eu pedi para ele desligar e ele disse. Ele disse, se ficar. Ele vai estar aqui e ele liga de novo. Tá? Eu acho razoável. Eu já estou doente daí. Diminuiu pela metade mesmo, Raquel. Tá bom? Então tá. Vem cá, por favor, vocês aqui pra cá para fazer uma coisa mais intimista. A nossa ideia original era de colocar cordas aqui, etc. Vocês aqui no cantinho, né? Por favor, só para fazer uma coisa mais intimista, porque vem de longe, a pessoa fica longe.
Mas eu falei pro Daniel, depois
Você na realidade, você está dirigindo. Centro social agora?
Pô, eu tô ali, ó, já.
Ah, não, vem pra cá.
Pô, aí vou ficar na frente.
Ah, é bom. Antes.
Mas peraí, cadê o...
Não, there's que chama Juti, senta Juti aqui. Nossa, muito centro de computação.
Mas não é uma câmara de som.
Mas é só tudo.
Não escuta.
Quer fazer a informação? Vamos pedir para começar a sessão. It's going to be English, by the way. So, Liu Qi, outro eu. Eu sou o mais novo docente no departamento de sociologia, o professor Fontes. I started telling you that. Just before we start, I just want to say a few words just about what we agreed last year in March in Beijing that the center would be doing for the next 4 years or 5 years. And I'm going to read the points out just to give you an idea. Okay? You have to remember, it's a very small center. Professor Pacquiao is the president, I'm the director, and Sen Hiratuka is a board member. So that's basically that's 3, and then we have the students President Xi, which is sort of behind us, which is a group of about 8 or 9 professors in core institutes: consumer economics, philosophy and human sciences, geosciences, and institutes and studies of language. So that's more or less, who we are. All people who have recently, relatively recently, understood that China is important and changed their career tracks and their research interests to try and embrace this, because Brazil really needs to understand its biggest commercial partner in its own terms, and this is what we can do through social sciences. And we had this huge stroke of luck, which was to Cass proposed a centre for Unicamp. This had to do with various things, but one of the most important of them was Unicamp's role in Latin America and its ratings in the world. They really understood it was a top university. That was also, I think, one year Unicamp got ahead of USP in the world in the ratings, and so it was that year that they kind of decided to go to Unicamp. So that was just one time this happened, 2017, I think, and then 2000. So Li Pei-ling, who was mentioned a few times here, came along and said to me, "Tom, why don't you go and find out if you can set up a centre for Cass at Unicamp?" I said, "Okay, I'll do that." We said it to Marcel and Bob, and I said, "Why is this coming from you, not via letter or something?" I said, "Well, we worked together for years, so this is, he said this to me, so I come and talk to you." "Ah, okay." And he just asked me some pretty sticky questions. But it lasted 10 or 12 minutes. He said, "Okay," there was no money involved for him. "Okay, we can take it." So that's how it started. So he was daring, a physicist, myself and Noble, daring, and brought it. And we went to Beijing together, and we signed it in commission, and then the following year it came installed. Right, so that's how it started. And then we renewed it. And just letting you know, and so obviously we were cut, everything was cut by the pandemic, right? 2019 was installed, 2020, what happened? And so what we've just started doing with our two Chinese colleagues in the last 2 days, which is going around various research groups in philosophy, human sciences, and economics, and talking about their research and trying to understand how it might intersect with research being done in Cass, especially in the Institute of Sociology, and how we can get this much desired joint research, which we haven't yet done, going. We've done books together and all sorts of things, books published in Chinese and English and stuff like that, seminars, classes. We do classes together. So main activity, Monday mornings, second semester, 8 o'clock in the morning. I know it's a terrible time, but that's 11 hours later in China. Chinese go to bed early, so we do it then. And we have Chinese professors teaching in English about Chinese sociology. Eugene has already been in class, and she was commented by our colleague and her friend, Sally Scalon from Federal University of Rio de Janeiro. And that's the pattern. A Chinese professor will talk about their research or something more general, and a Brazilian professor will comment on that, and then the students will take it away. And then we're starting to turn many of these classes into books, because we use transcription online, and then we're going to get some of my research assistants are over here, so they're helping, they're kind of responsible for this. And so this is what we're publishing, and because they're classes, and it's like recent advances in Chinese social sciences or something. So it's something that's going to be quite accessible to the population to just understand that Chinese are not monsters, but they're very interesting, and there's some very, because Brazil doesn't know China. That's one of them, but it doesn't know it. And a lot of people think it's a place that's got this overwhelming police state kind of stuff. It's not like Stalin's Russia, by any means. So this has been And the evaluations from the students have all been, in the first couple of years, this is humanized China. I had no idea what this is. Now, internet is doing this through some of these TikTok programs and stuff, so that's interesting. The mechanisms of humanization. But in any case, this is the 4 things that we decided to do over the next few years, which have been now added to by student exchange, and we'll soon have professorial exchange. Chinese do everything step by step, not 5 or 6 things all at the same time, everything step by step. So the first one was to deepen academic cooperation between Unicamp and Cass by investigating potential collaborative projects and also by sharing available data and library resources. Data and library resources, that's quite key to cooperation. Second, launching publications starting with key Chinese lectures in contemporary Chinese sociology, I just talked about that, in Brazilian Portuguese, and eventually in English, later moving to include other disciplines. Other first disciplines, like else, political science, and certainly how I talk with some economics students here. Economics. Contributing to strengthening multidisciplinary academic networks between China and the Latin American region. The mission that was here is going tomorrow to Santiago, Chile, where they're going to set up a Cass Center in Latin American studies, China studies there, the Latin American Studies Institute, and then they're going to Peru, and they'll set up a center in Peru. So that their network is growing now. And finally, promoting a hub of Sino-Brazilian relations based in the wider context, both geographically and through a diversity of implementation strategies. So that's part of it. Now we've got student exchange in here. We didn't put student exchange in here at this time because in China, if you write it down and you say it at a meeting, you've got to do it, right? And we didn't have any money for the student exchange. And so it didn't come in, but the money came today. So, step by step, right? The money came today. And it was something that both Raquel and I knew about, then the president of Cass University spoke, very incisive. I've never met him before. Not the gentleman who's the vice president of Cass who talked here, but the president, and he said, we've got the money. And it was very incisive about that. And so this theme that we're talking about here, which is civilization, and modernization. That was their title, that's Chinese title. And of course we don't think of development. So that's why I put a development in the title, just to say, at least we've got some autonomy and stuff. I thought it was very interesting, and I said this to Jan, and I thought, that was such a simple kind of idea, the expressions don't quite work here. And he said, yeah, we talked quite a lot together. It was just a way of building, he said, because in Cass, we're sure about this exchange. And in China, we know that Brazil, and it's an very important dialogue for us. So this is where we are. We're agents fluctuating around the world, and we're somehow in a stream of history. And this is what's happening in this room today. And so that's what I wanted to say. So now I'll pass over to Raquel to direct the session. I said to the colleagues maybe half an hour each, if they were up to half an hour if they wanted. Yeah, I don't know what the time is, so you might want to, because we're a bit late. 5 o'clock, well then, half an hour each, we've got no time for discussions. That's it.
20 minutes.
Okay.
So, good afternoon, everyone. It's a pleasure to have you here, and thank you all our invitees to be here. This seminar is the seminar of Cass-Unicamp, Civilization Exchange, China and Brazil discuss the future of modernization. But now, before I will present our visitors. So, Dr. Liu Qi is a research fellow and vice director of the Department of Sociology of Consumption and Culture at the prestigious Institute of Sociology of Chinese Academy of Social Sciences. She also serves as Vice Chair and Secretary General of the Research Committee of Sociology of Consumption of the Chinese Sociological Association. Dr. Zhu obtained her PhD and master's degree from the University of Manchester and a BA degree from Fudan University. Her research interests span across the sociology of consumption, sustainable consumption, social stratification, consumer culture of youth, and the internet and society. She recently contributed a chapter on the middle class in contemporary China and its consumption patterns in the Handbook of Social Inequalities in BRICS countries, which incidentally contains chapters by 3 professors from Unicamp Department of Sociology and 3 professors from the Institute of Sociology. She has also published several significant works, including Taste and Material Aspiration, Consumption Patterns of the Middle Class in Contemporary China, and the New Middle Class and the New Consumption Class Structural Transition and Lifestyle Changes against the background of Internet development. Her scholarly contributions have significantly advanced understanding of the complex relationship between consumption, culture, and society. And here, Dr. Qi Liu, is it correct? Yeah. Qi Liu is an assistant editor of the Journal of Chinese Sociology. Her research examines lived experiences of research demand and social environment change in China. She focuses on how infrastructures, technologies, and cultural conventions are interweaved in everyday life to produce multiple social and environmental outcomes, using transdisciplinary approaches offered by practice theory, political ecology, and beyond. Prior to completing PhD in geography at the University of Manchester, he studied sociology at Xiamen University and Renmin University of China. And we have 2 commentators here too. Tom, Professor Tom, Professor of Sociology at the University of Campinas, and Dr. Leonardo Fontes, who is the coordinator of the graduate studies in sociology, also here at the University of Campinas. So I will begin to ask to Dr. Chu to present his work. Please, we have 20 minutes to this presentation, so we can have time to the comments. Okay?
Tem que botar a mão da apresentação. Vai em apresentação de slides.
Obrigada, professora.
Good afternoon, everyone.
You have a microphone?
It's a modernization.
Thank you. Hi. Oh, it's such a great honor to be here. It's like Tom said, I look forward to it today for many years. It's what we should do many years before. Because myself, I'm doing consumption, so I will give you share some of my studies and some of my findings and give you a glimpse of the Chinese society in 20 minutes. So yeah, still it's I'm very excited for this speech. So at the beginning of the speech, let's think about a question, a thing together. So what is modernization? It might be easier to think about it from consumption, right? Because consumption is everyday life. Yeah. Is it modernization if you use a mobile phone? Is it modernization if you drive a car to work every day? Or is it modernization if you live a westernized way of life? So they are not really only academic questions. Actually, they are our reality. So it's the kind of question that I think the academia, not only in China, but in many developing countries are thinking about it. So what kind of modernization route we should follow? Is this still the Western way of route of modernization, or it's a different one? So my research is not about such a grand topic, but I will have some it will have some implications on this issue. So the Chinese modernization process exhibits distinct characteristics that set it apart from modernization experiences of other countries, such as the simultaneous transformation of the economic system and the social structure. So it means that the change of social structure and economic transformation happening together in China, happening together in China, along with the coexistence of agricultural, industrial, and post-industrial societies. So it's quite complicated. If you have any plans, well, you're welcome to visit China. Since it's a free visa, right? Yeah. Although 24 hours flight. But still, you're very welcome to China. And so if you have any chance to go to China, you can see it's such a mixture of culture. It has there is modern and also postmodern culture. And we call it like one of the cities I quite like is Chongqing. Chongqing it has a kind of a nickname, as far as I know, on YouTube or something, called it's a cyberpunk city. Cyberpunk city. Yeah.
Which city?
Cyberpunk. Chongqing. Yeah.
Okay.
So it has some digital characteristics. Also has some post-modern society characteristics. So other cities will see also like there are some rural society characteristics, also mixed with modern society characteristics. So this is a kind of argument from Li Peiling, from one of the most famous sociologists in China. After it, I will introduce one of his theory on modernization. So, the development process of consumption modernization in China. So it's mainly from the consumption side. The first stage, that would be like from 1949 to 1978. That is the history of the new China was founded, but before the reform and the opening up policy. So the first stage, was characterized by a focus on meeting basic survival needs. That means that back to that time, people's life were very hard. So there's a constraint called the provision constraint. So it's the main institution was planned provision, planned economy. That means planned provision and planned consumption. So because of the material scarcity, people, the life people can only survive back to that time. So the second stage, after the reform, from 1978 to 2012, it is a kind of high-speed growth of consumption. That is the stage. So briefly speaking, the role of consumption in economic development became increasingly important and prominent. And the government implemented serious policies that aimed at expanding domestic demand and promoting consumption upgrading. So as a consequence, the population's income and consumption grew rapidly. And the third stage, that is from 2012 to now, that is the characteristics of from high speed to high quality of consumption. Well, we are not very high quality consumption now, but it's a kind of developing trend and the goal. So many people's living standards have been greatly improved, and a primary feature of the consumption structure during this stage is a shift from a focus on physical goods. So like people before this stage, people are keen on possessions, and especially on possession of material goods. But however, in this stage, many people increase. There's a shift from possession of material goods to the use of services. So that is an increase of service consumption. That is reflecting a transition from basic survival consumption to development consumption, and a shift to emphasize from quantity to quality. So the new development sociology proposed by Liu Qi, that is very important theory of interpreting what kind of modernization China seeks to. So based on China's development experience, the modernized social transformation is a continuum of structural improvements, which may not have a destined endpoint, a predetermined final social type. Instead, the aspiration for a better life and the revolutionary leaps in productivity continuously shape our future society. That means consumption, again, is very important for the modernization of China. Within the framework of the new development sociology, this can be understood as inevitable choices we have made in the face of different development challenges at various stages of development. However, the outcomes of development have shown that only by grounding the driving forces of development in people's well-being and closely integrating production with consumption can we mobilize the enthusiasm and aspirations for development among hundreds of millions of people and form the deep-seated momentum for long-term and sustainable development. So basically the idea is consumption is related with people's well-being, and that is a goal of a social problem, isn't it? So, and also it is the goal of our development of a society, and also it is the motive for a society to develop. So that is the main idea. Okay, there are some theories on the transformation of consumption culture. I will go through these slides quickly and show you some empirical findings. I think that's more interesting. So, oh yes, my theory. Okay, I'll skip it. The graphs. That is the graph from National Bureau of Statistics of China. So that is, we can see the expenditure, the consumption is basically family consumption expenditure nationwide from 1981 till now, like more than tens of years. So we can see that it is keeps growing. However, from 2012, the growing rate is not that significant. However, between we can see this high-speed period is from 2000 to 2012, isn't it? The average annual growth rate is this period. So it's basically the growth rate of per capita consumption expenditure is nearly 10%. This is a high-speed period. Okay, this one. Since 2009, both consumption and GDP growth have slowed down. You can see this graph. So this graph is 20 lines. That means that is the GDP growth rate. We can stick to the red line. Yeah, that is GDP trend. So it is, you can see China keeps like around 10% every year, the GDP growth. Although these years after the pandemic is growing down. So anyway, the point of the graph is to show that we can see the red line and the annual growth rate of per capita consumption expenditure of the total population, all residents, is the green line. So you can just compare the red line and the green line. So the before, this the red line are always above the green line, isn't it? That means GDP growth is faster than consumption. However, from 2009, the consumption expenditure grows faster than GDP, all sometimes mingled together. So the GDP growth rate is not that significantly faster than consumption. Yeah, that of course, what does this graph mean? So it means, in some point, right, consumption is very important for economic development. So that is one of the ideas. Another one, I think, also, it is also this consumption is also is very important for people's well-being. So that means this it also consistent with our development mode that we aim to to improve people's well-being rather than merely develop the economy. Although they are not paradoxical in many cases. However, it is paradoxical in some cases, like the paradox of economic development and the human development, isn't it? So, but what we try to do is to improve people's life well-being and achieve the goal of human development. So this is a graph also from the national statistics. It's categories. There are 8 categories of family expenditure in our national official statistics. That is the food, housing, transportation, communication, healthcare and medical services, clothing and footwear, household equipment, relations, services, education, culture, recreation, and services. So these are actually kind of quite standard across different across official statistics, including the UN, the UK, the US, all use the similar indicators for family expenditure. So so for China, we can see these 2 lines are more significant. They are food and housing. So like the expenditure proportion is decreasing from this years, from end of 20th century and to now. The food expenditure share is decreasing. However, the housing expenditure share is increasing. And although this recent 10 years is becoming more flat. So, so food and housing are the expenditures that have changed the most in the past 30 years. And for other expenditures, they are more flat, the lines. So that reflect like this clothing, education, and the culture and the recreation. However, this expenditure share is not that high across the years. They stick to like below 10%. For this year, at the beginning of the 21st century, it is higher. Okay. The next one. The service consumption, like what I mentioned at the beginning, the service consumption, it is a significant characteristics of the third stage of consumption modernization. So that is people switch from, most people, the majority of people switch from the possession of goods to use of services. So service consumption, according to the data of national statistics, is also increasing, and in 2019 achieves like 45% of the expenditure share of our total family expenditure. So after the pandemic, it is a little bit decreasing, but now after it is still have the trend increasing. So that is actually not this number. We talk a lot about this number. It is not easy to achieve this number actually. So it is. We all know the service consumption is very important for a large economy because it provides jobs. Right? It is very important, and also it is very important to improve people's quality of life. Right. So people, you can, like especially women, can be like relieved from family care, children care. So and also people will spend more time and money on recreation. That means I'm trying to explain what the service consumption means. What this percentage, nearly half expenditure share means. I mean, give you a sense so that it relieve people from daily routine labor and give people some recreation and entertainment and more cultural consumption, more education. So these services, this means a lot for China, and it's been discussed by the government, by the media. So it's 45% of the expenditure share of service consumption. Service consumption means there is a definition: catering, education, culture, recreation, medical, and life service. Okay. I also did this analysis with this line. The blue line is urbanization rate. Urbanization rate. We can see the urbanization rate for China is growing more than 60% now. So that means, I remember 65 or 63 something. That means 63% of Chinese population living in cities now. Yeah. So that is very high and urbanization rate. And from 1913, from even the statistics exists, is about 50%. So this process should begin from the beginning from the first decade of the 21st century. Along this trend, this increase of urbanization rate, you can see the service consumption is also increasing. Service consumption is this line, the orange line. Do that. The service consumption, so they have a similar trend. It also has this trend. It grows. The service consumption grows along with the increase of the urbanization rate. Okay, the different income groups in China. I analyze this use only this survey. It is a large national survey conducted by my institute, costs a lot of money because it tries to represent urban and rural China. So this survey shows the high-income group, that is the dark blue line, the dark green line, spends the most on developmental consumption, and the expenditure proportion is also the highest. So the development consumption, what does the development consumption mean? I define development consumption as expenditures on culture, recreation, tourism, and durables, such as home appliance, furniture, vehicles, and clothing. So the high-income group spends the most on these expenditures, and their expenditure share is also the highest. And also the upper middle income group shows strong consumption potential, that is this green line. Okay, the last slide is about digital society. So I also use the CSS data and find that the digital capability has a significant impact on household consumption. So if that means if the digital capability is higher, their consumption share, their consumption house expenditure per capita is higher, and also the developmental consumption expenditure per capita is also higher. That means their quality of life is also higher. So digital capability, I define this through this set of variables, measuring internet usage skills. I use a set of variables including information searching, online shopping, internet usage, internet security skills, internet behavior norms, and digital content creation. It is basically from use internet and also to know about the norms of the internet, and also from daily use to, which is very important for people with internet security skills, like how to protect yourself, protect your own finance on internet. So it's a higher level of digital capability. So if I use these indicators, it finds the very high digital capability associates with the highest expenditure and also highest developmental expenditure. So the share would be nearly 17% of developmental expenditure share. Okay, thank you very much for your attention, and welcome to follow our account on WeChat. That is my apartment. That is my team. My apartment on the sociology of consumption culture, and we create a WeChat account to issue many papers, articles, and consumption trends in China. Okay, thank you very much again.
Presentation, and please allow the comments. 5 to 8 minutes. Okay.
I can sit here, can I?
Yes.
I've never, until I know you, I've read your stuff on consumption all the time. And it's obviously a lens through which to examine this. And of course, as we're sociologists, we're always trying to look for bad things around as well, things that are not going right. And so I was wondering about the pathologies of consumption society. I mean, when I was a student at the age of some of these, I used to read about American society's ills because of hyper-consumption. And I was wondering if you could elaborate a bit on what indicators you have. To open that?
No, I think I can do it.
Elaborate on what ills are associated, that you see being associated with also the increase in consumption in China. But one of the things, of course, I've been to China since 2004, and when I first went, all of the great rivers were polluted. The sky of Beijing was polluted. But people were moving to the cities. There would have been maybe at that time 40% in the cities, and now they're 63. And we're talking about 63%, 1.4 billion. It's a huge number of people who moved just in those 20 years going to China. And so it's kind of interesting to you, does part of your consumer research reflect on these pathologies? Because I noticed in your first consumption indicating food, and then you have alcohol and you have tobacco, and they're all together. Obviously, in a Puritan type vision, you might find in the United States, a place like that, alcohol and tobacco are not food. There's something more bad, and they hurt people, or people are drinking and smoking them to get away from reality. So that's just one question. Because you're working on gross data. The next talk we're going to have is going to be very micro level. So this is the big data. This is what's very nice in China, because before, when I first went to China, everybody seemed to be doing the big data. And it's changed so much in 20 years. You know, now there's a relationship between the small and the big. And the small didn't used to really appear that much. At least in all the talks I heard. And then it started appearing. And the change was very fast. You know, 2 or 3 years, everything would change. And this is in just one institute, Cass. But it was in the rest of Chinese. I could see it in Cass, because that was what I was closest to. See it around. So that's one kind of observation I would have. And the other question is, there's a very, I just have too much paper. This question of the digital capability, what I noticed is that is very highly correlated with income. And if you look, when you've got right next to very low to very high, you've got per capita household expenditure. So that this high capability is, you know, 3 times more household expenditure than very low capability. So it could be a spurious relationship, because within households that spend high and have low digital capability, what does that mean? You know, I just was trying to understand how household expenditure is related and digital capability are related out there. There's some relation, because yeah, that's because I looked at that data and I thought, oh my God, sorry. There were things. I had some thoughts last night which we talked about. I mentioned to you this morning, but I'm not going to come up with them because they're not technical. They're like, what does this concept mean for you in China? What does it mean for Western sociology? And what does using that word for the two things mean? And what does it mean to the audience? But I'm not going to go into that, because this is going to be, and has been since we started BRICS Dialogue in 2011. It has been all the time something that's talking. Are we talking about the same thing when we use the same words together in English? And quite often we're not talking about precisely the same thing. So so you can make some.
I like your last question actually.
Yeah.
I will start from the last question. I think the problem is we use English, isn't it?
Yes.
And with the technology of AI, I think maybe in the future we can use our own native language to do research, but we still can communicate. So language translation is not a problem. However, when we speak, when we write in English, we think in English, right? We have to fit into this framework of Western sociology. That is a thing, yeah. But when from my own experience, when I talk in Chinese, I think, yeah, can use some words and the way of thinking, I think is more native. But in English, I should kind of yeah, it's a different person.
Everyone.
Yeah, it's true. So the second question, Tom, really, I didn't know you do this statistics thing, but
Looked at it.
yeah, you're a good researcher. So the methodology of the survey is basically they interview a random person. So they use a case sampling to interview the random person of the family. So it will be the daughter or with the father, but all above 18 years old. So it caused some methodological problem, but it can predict. So if the interview is digital capability, it's kind of related to the family situation, we think. Because one reason is randomly selected, right? You can, so the 40 is highly likely will interview the youngest one in the family, and also very likely to interview this what is the word? Breadwinner, right, of the family. So
sorry.
Breadwinner? Right. Breadwinner? Does it make sense?
Breadwinner. Oh, the person who brings in the money.
Yeah.
Okay, right.
Breadwinner. Exactly. We don't use that word, isn't it? It's strange. Yeah, but in some way it can predict, but it also, I agree with you, it caused some methodological problems as well. So, and what is the first question? I didn't get the
The first question was that when I was the age of some of these students, we were reading about critiques of consumer society in the United States, and one of the big critiques was the pathologies of consumer society. You know, too much drink, too much cigarettes, too much drugs, too much unhappiness, too many pills, and is there a reflection about consumption and pathological consumption in your framework? Because in your first curve, it's got food, alcohol, and tobacco.
That is a translation, I think. Well, but no, not really the translation. But in our national statistic, it's called 饮食烟酒，就是 it is food, drinks and tobacco. It is, but I mean, in reality, food must account for a large percent of this category. I think. So, I haven't compared between the percentage of people who take tobacco and that's but it's mainly means food.
So just worried about the pathologies, is my question. The pathologies, the bad sides of consumption.
Oh yes, that is a good question. So, and I can talk all day, but in very limited time.
Raquel won't let you.
Yeah. So yeah, in very limited time, I want to share from two perspectives. One is from culture. So consumer culture, it caused some problems, and our young people in China, they produce it, and they kind of there's a very new consumer culture among our young generation, like this digital culture, and also youth subculture, and also actually they lead this trend of new consumption culture. For example, one of my PhD students studies this goods economy. Does it make sense to you, the goods economy? It is some badges from the game, and it's Labubu. Does it make sense? The most popular idol, a pop mart, Labubu, like this goods. I heard
it's a little doll.
Yeah, I heard it's very expensive. It's good.
Some of you might. It's in the newspaper every day. In Brazil, they're talking about it. There's some factory people are stealing them.
It's kind of a luxury becomes. Yeah. So anyway, so my students studies this kind of thing called the goods economy. Actually, it's in Chinese it's called 股资经济. So 经济 means economy. 股资 means goods. So goods, this word was originally from Japanese. So it is basically he's interested in all these badges, the dolls, only the cards. Can you imagine? It's a plastic card. It can cost a huge amount of money online. So the original price might be like 10 yuan, maybe one.
Yeah, 10 reais.
Yeah, but can be like 600. Yeah, on the market, and you can't get it. And also this blind box. This kind of.
Do you know this? What she's talking about?
Kind of like this third one.
The young generation, it's just a kind of very attractive to this kind of new economy and also generated new culture. So they will spend all their money on these goods and bring their doll everywhere they travel.
Oh, the doll. This is this newborn doll. What is it called? Reborn. It's another thing? No?
No, it's not that one. I think. So that is a cultural perspective, the consumption consequences, and another perspective from the environment. So you may know all the consumption culture. Yes. Labubu. Oh my God! I'm doing promotion.
LABUBU, okay?
So the second perspective is what I'm very interested in the environment. So my team is doing this annual green consumption survey every year in China. So we are concerned with the consequences of consumption in China, and that is one of the first projects that I'm very have the passion with, because one of the first, empirical projects. I'm have very much passion about it, because when I analyze the data, okay, I will, no problem, because I have so much passion on word consumption. Sorry, I can't stop. So I'm trying also to spread the knowledge of word consumption. So it is the first way that when I design questionnaire, I will put some quiz at the beginning to ask people whether you know that half of our ocean, half of the ocean garbage is plastic, and so it turns out not that good. Not many people know that. No, most people know. Oh, this is the Earth. We turn off the lights for 2 hours, something like that. This green way of lifestyle, but they don't really know the knowledge. So if they don't know the consequences of plastic consumption, they wouldn't change their way of life. So, okay, I will stop here.
Okay, thank you very much.
Thank you.
Some comments?
Yeah, I'll try to be. Thank you, Raquel. Thank you, Don, once again for the invitation, for organizing the seminar. Thank you, Professor Zuji. It was very, very interesting presentation. And I just want to make like 2 or 3 quick questions. Probably the answers are not quick, but maybe we can keep discussing it further after the seminar. But first of all, I think that's very interesting that China has this very important idea that consumption must drive development, because it looks like Chinese economists understood better how economy works than the United States or European economists. Usually liberal economists would say that investment will drive development and not consumption, but actually in practice it works on the other way. But the idea that consumption must drive development brings some problems that I think Tom started to bring some of them, but I want to take a look at other issues. The first is sustainability. When you talk about high quality consumption, are you talking about like green consumptions or consumption of items that are not harming the environment or this kind of things? How can we raise the capacity of consumption of huge population like we have in China, and at the same time to preserve the environment? The second thing that I wanted to ask you is about other consequences of modernization and especially urbanization that we saw here in Brazil and in the United States, Europe, etc. That's these usually when we see the modernization process of the economy, we also see an enhance in individualism. So how is this changing in Chinese society? How social ties and forms of relationship, local sociability, etc., are being affected by this modernization and urbanization process. And also, I wanted to ask you about the influence of the Eastern countries in these patterns of consumptions. Do we see an influence of American way of life or the American way of consumption and products and cultural products, etc. in China, and how is China dealing with this? And finally, one thing that I think that's very interesting because like Brazilian society, Brazilian sociology has a very strong influence from French sociology. And one very important French sociologist, Pierre Bourdieu, that you probably know, and he talks about how consumption is used to, especially by higher classes, to differentiate themselves from lower classes. So my question is if you have any forms of study of this differentiation process among different levels of Chinese society, and if this applies to China or if we're talking about different processes. So that's just some questions for us to start. I know that you probably won't have time to answer all of them, but just to start the debate.
I'm trying. Of course, you have 2 minutes.
Raquel's very generous.
Thank you very much. Because I really, thank you very much for your questions. I will answer 1 or 2 of them, but we will talk about it later more. Oh, so first question is yes, high quality question is about like consumption, and what I'm trying to do is I don't think it's done by my voice. Okay, it's working now. No, sorry. Yes, this one.
You have to speak more.
Sorry.
And what I'm trying to do is I want to develop a kind of indicator system to measure this high quality consumption from many aspects. So another one is a very interesting question. So how China deal with this consumerism? I can give you an example. So how the young people deal with it, because I've done some studies and published some papers on that. So because I'm very interested in the new consumption trends of the young people. So one of the trend is the young people, for like back to 10 years ago, what their fashion is to wear luxury goods, right? To own luxury goods, to wear luxury brands, to have this big logo on their t-shirt, to use luxury bags. But nowadays, the young people in China are trying to kind of bargaining this price with the market. So, and very interestingly, the market is so concerned with what the young people like. So you can see this power has changed when the consumers stick to what they want. So I mean, back to 10 years ago, that is the consumers didn't know what they want, so they were framed and shaped by the market, by the society. However, the young generation, I think, is more confident generation, and they know what they want. They like the quality goods with lower prices. Yeah, they want the best bargain in the market. I think that might be a way of dealing with consumerism, and as a consequence, the young people, they not only get what they want, and they shape the market. Thank you very much.
Okay, can we go to the next presentation? Professor?
Qi. I came from the Institute of Sociology class. It's a great honor for me to represent our organization and share my research in this vital academic seminar. And I was so impressed by the hosting of Cass-Unicamp Center for China Studies for inviting us and leading us to look around the influential research centers and institutes in this university. And also, I was impressed by the database, like in CESOP, about the public unions. And also, thanks for Judy for sharing and the overview of the consumption situations in our society. And my research is kind of building up from a micro perspective. As I was trained in qualitative studies, I cannot share some very general data about the relationship between women and the environment, but I think I can use the interview data to show how urban women in contemporary China understand their relations to environment, especially in the everyday life, what they really do and they really think. So my presentation consists of 5 parts. I'll briefly introduce the history of the relationship between women and the environment in China, and I will review 3 mainstream theories in this domain, and I will briefly introduce the methodology and then move to the key insights and key findings of environmental practices in women's daily life, and I will wrap up this presentation by reflecting on the theoretical and policy implications of the intersection of women and environment as a whole. So this picture, you can see, it is a pottery woman had in Hongshan culture archaeological zone dates back to 5,000 years ago. And the scientists guess that it somehow relates to a female goddess, a very female goddess called Yuwa in Chinese history, mythology, in Chinese mythology, who created the human hand and repaired the pillar of heaven in China. So just like in other ancient civilizations, in ancient China, people believe that woman has very close relationship with environment, especially because of their magical ability of reproduction, giving birth to creatures. And here, the left-hand poster, the statement on it is woman hold up half the sky. This is even very popular among younger generations in China. And this poster and this statement was pronounced by Mao Zedong during 1960s to 1970s. And the right-hand picture just show a girl from the so-called Iron Ghost team, which formed at the same time working in the Stone Mountain. So at that time, women were encouraged to take up roles in many labor-intensive industries, such as heavy industries and farming and plantation, just like men did. But from an environmental sociologist perspective, women, just like men at that time, intended to exploit and utilize the environment instead of protecting it. And over the past decade, we are observing a growing participation from women in environmental governance, such as sorting waste, like you said, you've seen from the picture, in rural and urban communities, and also in things like protecting rivers and wetland and the ocean, things like that. So actually, these kind of activities were promoted by different levels of government. Back in 1995, the Fourth World Conference on Women in Beijing identified women and the environment as one of the 12 strategic objectives of their action. And in the very recent China's Women's Development Outline also positions women as the main promoter of ecological civilization. So ecological civilization has been proposed by President Xi since 2012, and it's built upon the traditional Chinese philosophy that emphasizes the harmony between humankind and nature. And in research context, we find different streams of studies also looking at the relationship between women and environment. The first one is environmental sociology, which focuses on women's environmental action in public areas, such as environmental activism or environmental governance. And the gender studies tend to focus on how gender inequality has been reproduced by women's daily care practices at home. Despite the proven relationship between women and environmental actions at home, we just find that women's informal and routinized environmental practices are largely understudied. So my question is, how do women-led routine care intersect with the environmental practices at home? And what does that mean for China's path to the harmony between humankind and nature? The first very influential perspective in understanding the relationship between woman, home, and the environment is ecofeminism, which believes that women's natural affinity for nature stems from the gendered care roles that women take, such as fetching water, collecting firewood, or disposing waste. And it critiques the patriarchal exploitation of nature and woman at the same time in the capitalist system. In contrast to ecofeminism, the modernization perspective extends the meaning of the relationship between woman, home, and the environment in two ways. The first is it extends the categories of environmental-related actions from managing resources to consumption, hygiene, and environmental health, like aspects of everyday life in a modern society. And the second one is it tries to bring more structural forces instead of capitalism and patriarchal forces into the picture. And this structural forces mean like state power, health and reproduction, scientific and technological progress, consumerism, things like that. And so we try to look a little bit deeper into the relationship between woman, home, and the environment from the perspective of daily care. Here we use daily care or care to emphasize the relationality, as we considered care as the intersection of health, of self and others, and of indoor and outdoor environments, and then of home as a private sphere and society as a public sphere. So relationalities connects all this kind of stuff together. And also, in previous studies, especially in gender studies, they consider women's daily care may reinforce the gender division of labor. While here we somehow foreground the environmental implications of daily care as we try to bring the features of modern society into the picture, such as consumption, hygiene, like personal hygiene and environmental hygiene, and environmental health, which critically related to food safety in China. Here is our analytical framework. We centered home in this framework in order to try to connect natural environment and human society, as home provides both the physical and the cultural context for women to take up their responsibilities of care in everyday life. And we categorize the daily care practices at home into 4 types: care to reduce the hazards of pollution, care that promotes health, care that improves the sanitation, and care that maintains physiological hygiene. This is a subject related to my PhD supervisor's bigger program. And we traveled back to China in 2019, just at the end, in December of 2019, before the outbreak of the global pandemic. And we collected data from Beijing and Shanghai from 40 women participants, aging from 22 to 70 years old. We try to cover as diverse as possible of their occupations, education, finance, family structure, and living conditions. We did participant observation and a home tour after their consent. And here I want to share a very innovative ways to do interview with in terms of environmental issues with people in terms of their everyday life. That is to focus on care activities instead of environmental actions, because sometimes you may observe a say and do gap in people's environmental performances, right? They may have higher consciousness of environmental problems, but they don't do much to address that problem in everyday life. So we start from what they really do in their everyday life, and for women that is care, that is daily care. So we try to start from how they care for others in order to build up a safer, inclusive, sustainable environment and comfortable, hygienic, clean environment for their family members. Okay, I'll speak up. So we analyze 4 types of environmental, 4 ways that environmental actions intersect with daily care practices. The first one is coping with air pollution. And we found women identified a range of air pollutions inside and outside of their house, but they only take up simple coping strategies to deal with that. That is, especially for the outdoor air pollution, they just wear masks very occasionally. That was very impressive because in Western social media, we're always pursued by the news that China has experienced very severe air pollution, such as smoke, since 2010. But in our research in 2019, we found it a little bit different in people's everyday life. And we asked why you don't take extra action to outdoor air pollution. The first is people in Beijing, they said air pollution has been significantly improved due to the state's environmental governance, especially after 2015, when the central government announced a national fight for air pollution. So actually, the air quality has been significantly improved since 2015 to 2019. And the second one is especially after another pandemic in China, that is SARS. In 2003, people learned how to keep their room hygienic. One of the main ways is to ventilate at least once a day. So because of the ventilation, it makes it impossible to maintain indoor air and unaffected by outdoor air. And also, mothers mentioned the fantasy of creating zero pollution indoor environment would create more risks for children because that will weaken their immune system, and also more burdens for mothers because you can see if they want to use the household appliances, that will create more household work for them. So they started to reflect on the overconsumption of household appliances, the multiplication of household appliances to solve air pollution at home. And the second one is to promote environmental health. Here we take dairy strategies as an example. Like urban women will grow vegetables and fruits in the countryside for their urban household consumption, and they reduce the frequency of eating in restaurants or getting food delivery to prevent the chemicals that may involved in the food that is not cooked by them. And the third one is they purchase imported food, especially milk. The relationships between food, environment, and care reflected by their reflection is obviously cooking for others as a way to improve their environmental health, but there's another interesting finding that healthier eating habits actually contribute to a more sustainable lifestyle. Sister Zhang in Shanghai, she once worried about the heat of her son when her son was young, because her son was not very obsessed with eating. He didn't eat enough food, so he was sick and weak. But Sister Zhang said she tries to change the table dinner. Like Chinese people used to share foods from the same place, right, around a table. But she tries to, in her house, to give, allocate food in everybody's food, just like in some Western countries. And she found that, wow, in addition to her son, everybody will finish the foods in their own place. So that reduced the food waste of her home. So yeah, you can see how care for others may actually contribute to a more sustainable lifestyle. The third one is improve environmental hygiene. Like people also concerned about different types of various bacteria, both from their inside of their body or outside their body. And they try to consume more and more chemical agents, including detergents, disinfectants, cleaning agents. And one of the negative environmental outcome of this strategy is that it will consume more water to rinse and reduce the residues, and also generate more waste because many chemical agents are disposable products. At the same time, we also find some reflections over the so-called vicious cycle proposed by Siyu. Siyu is a white-collar worker in Shanghai. She just mentioned that because of our pursuit for environmental hygiene, we choose to use chemical agents and plastic products, which will further lead to environmental degradation, which will promote us to use more chemical agents and plastic products to for the fear of being affected by the environment. So the final topic, just emerging from our conversation with our participants, is washing underwear. So Chinese women has very different ways of washing underwear in comparison with their Western counterparts, which is also very resource and intensive. And we just found that women's attention to and care for underwear hygiene largely stemmed from their concern for reproductive health and the fear of gynecological diseases. At the same time, many women participants started to reflect on where their fear comes from. Actually, like in many other Asian countries, women's anxiety and fear about gynecological diseases are related to not only medical treatment difficulties, but also gender, stigma, and shame. And by doing so, women started to call for the gender equality, especially in sexual relationships. So the richness of household environmentalism through a care lens has been summarized in this table. Like we at least find 5 types of practices emerging from their daily care practices that which are perceiving environmental risks, coping with environmental pollution, adapting to environmental changes, learning environmental knowledge. Okay, I will wrap it up. And practicing environmental protection. And our research speaks to at least their areas in not only sociology but also geography or gender studies. They are in development, environmentalism, the permeability of home and gender subjectivities. And here are some policy implications. I hope my research will provide you some information about the invisible parts of Chinese society that might not be included into the big data set. Thanks so much.
Thank you very much. And sorry, I was limiting you well. So I make this out of it. Leonardo, want to make some comments?
I'll try to be very quick because we are running out of time and maybe some people want also to ask you some questions. Thank you very much for your presentation. It's very interesting and I really like this kind of research. Of course, I really like big data and more broad perspective, but this kind of qualitative research can bring us, as you said in the end of your presentation, some visible parts that usually we don't see when we look for just big numbers. And one thing that you brought for us is the centrality of care in this economy of daily life. You know? So I don't know if I have a question to you, but maybe trying to connect your presentation with our first presentation. One thing that I wanted to ask you both is if we are seeing a change in Chinese economy towards a more service economy. If we are going for the next step, and this again, the care and all these practices that you show us are going to be very central in this new Chinese economy. And connected to this, I wanted to ask you, how can we learn from the lessons that these women that you researched with shows us? How can we learn from their practices to, I don't know, maybe build some public policies or education programs or other kind of things that can be spread to other spaces or other families and etc. Just to start the debate. Thank you.
Don't want to.
I think I've got a mic.
If you want to answer now.
I will
answer
later.
Yeah.
Okay.
I really enjoyed this because these small studies illuminate a lot, and it's very well done, you know, and so I congratulate you on that. And the one thing I was thinking was care is something that hasn't really been theorized, as I understand you saying. And I was wondering, would you say that at some stage this is more conscious of self-care, it will become a form of social action? You know, so there'll be actors who will have different modes of caring and stuff like that. I'm action theorist, so that's the kind of sociology I do, so I was just interested in that. I don't have any really many substantial comments, but there's one two. One was when you talk of coping practices, there's indoor using multiple household appliances, range hoods, vacuum cleaners, dehumidifiers. In Brazil, one of the coping practices of pollution is to use perfume, to use smells, and it's not mentioned here. So, do you use? Brazil is the second or the first biggest market in smells in the world. You know, it's either with the United States, either by volume or by dollar, depending on the exchange rate. So it's pretty amazing because the US is much richer, much bigger than us. I was just asking, I'm interested in that. And then I think the ecological civilization is something that's really important because just see how the whole of China has been changed because of this orientation. sponge cities. I mean, the engineers have come in and they're remaking China because of this idea that the environment needs to be safe, and it's also become a vector of growth. So that's a really important, and you see it everywhere. I mean, it's not just something that is abstract. You know, it's actually real if you travel. So they'd be just my little comments, but nothing that substantive, except just to say I thought it was a really interesting study, and I see a lot of potential in it. And there's that theoretical question, will care become something else? And then just maybe there's a market for Brazilian smells in China. You know, who knows? We must sell more things than just soya beans and steel and petrol. You know, I mean, this is not possible. We have to be able to sell other things. It's not possible that we just sell those products. We need to go up value.
So thank you for your questions. I will start with the first question. So service consumption, from my understanding, is to consume some kind of feelings from the society, such as health. Health is a physical condition, but also a feeling, and cleanliness and comfort. Actually, there is a book written by a UK sociologist, who is called Elizabeth Shaw, about which is called 3C. We call it the book 3Cs, like cleanliness, comfort, and convenience. So these are 3 service consumption defined by her in her book in modern society that people consume more and more and more. But at the same time causes more negative environmental outcomes, which was trying to analyze why our modern society has an escalating demand for water resources and some other natural resources. She said it's because our pursuit for service consumption. So actually, despite this kind of reflection does not reflected in the policy context, my research tries to indicate that in reality, women started to reflect on the overconsumption in service consumption domain in their everyday life, and tried to prevent to overconsume more appliances provided by enterprises, but indeed create their household workload in everyday life. So, and actually, we may think that microplastic is very far from our everyday life. And, somebody may not even know this problem, but from my interview with the middle class urban women, many of them know this issue, and they try to relate themselves, their lifestyles, with such an issue. Yeah. And for the formal question, formal action raised by Tom, actually I didn't have some specific imagination of how we can try to transform the reflections and mundane practices of women into a more formal action. But I think it provides us an entry point to think about how people understand the environmental issues in their everyday life, not from the perspective of the state, but from their real lived experiences. It's the beginning.
Thank you. Well, I would like to ask someone some question, any question, but I know that it's late. I'm afraid you want to. And I'm afraid our colleagues are very tired, so please, I'm sorry, but you have to finish. So thank you very much for our professors here, Dr. Liu Qi and Dr. Liu Qi. Thank you very much for your presence here, and thank you very much for last word?
No, you the last word.
Last word.
She's the president of the scene.
Thank you very much.
Muito obrigado, gente.
Esqueci de interromper.